First, there was NBA Today. Then, there was NBA Tomorrow. And now, I present to you NBA Yesterday. In this series, we're going to take a creative player and go in the time machine and go all the way back to the 1980s, back when the NBA first got his legs to run with the big boys. In order to know where we're even going, we have to learn where we came from in the first place. So I'll be dropping lore, not only in the beginning of the series, but all throughout the series, all throughout the season, during games, just little tidbits about players, teams, just basketball things in the 1980s that you may or may not have even known. So I'm not gonna take a very long time explaining it, but we do have to start from the beginning. Not the very, very beginning like black and white footage, but kind of sort of the beginning. And the beginning for us is the NBA-ABA merger. This is the most important business venture in NBA history because it did three very, very important things for the league. The first very important thing it did was give the league opportunity to expand. I want you to imagine yourself as the NBA looking at the landscape of basketball in 1976. All your legends that everyone knows are gone. Your Jerry West, your Bob Cousy, your Bill Russell, your Wilt Chamberlain, the people that don't watch basketball but know the household names are not in the NBA anymore. You got Bill Walton, the hippie, on the Trailblazers who just won a championship. And you got Pete Maravich in his mid-30s as your leading scorer of the league. And your potential GOAT that you're deeming right now, who's the next Wilt, the next Bill, the guy who's going to take it all, is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and he's not very social. He's not necessarily a face of the league, more so than just the most talented guy in the league. So you really don't have that much going for you as the NBA. But you look out and you see the Harlem Globetrotters having nothing but fans in the stands, and they're doing things that you can't even imagine. All the stuff is against the rules. They're interacting with fans. They have a team that's set to lose. Now, mind you, I think in my head, right? In my head, that evolved into And One, into the early 2000s, right? That whole Harlem Globetrotter thing, there's no rules, no carrying, no traveling. We're going to do a whole bunch of other stuff on the court. That, I feel like, evolved into And One. So, Harlem Globetrotters are just as popular as And One was in the early 2000s. And then you look over and you see street leagues having popularity for the youth. So you have a Dr. J, a Connie Hawkins coming up in these street ball leagues, in these exhibitions, including NBA players, right? In my head, again, this evolved into the EBC, and on the West Coast, the Drew League. And even though those specifically happened during the hotter months, because obviously you can't have these leagues playing in the winter, so obviously it happens in the summer. But this is thousands, hundreds of people gathering at courts for free to watch a Dr. J who hasn't even stepped on a professional court yet. That's not necessarily 1976, but that's more so of what you're looking at in the landscape of basketball, right? And then you have the ABA. Now, the ABA is a lot more serious than the other two I just mentioned. The ABA, I would consider the Canadian Football League to the NFL. So that's what the ABA is. They're basically like the Canadian Football League, right? Not everything is about talent. Sometimes there's political things happening behind the scenes. So somebody like a Warren Moon, who could easily play for the NFL, had to go through certain politics and couldn't play quarterback in the NFL and ended up playing quarterback in the Canadian Football League. So there are stories like that to where there are people who are playing in the ABA that can play in the NBA. And sometimes even the NBA are offering contracts to certain players in the ABA because they stick out like a sore thumb. So it's not necessarily a development league, it's something else. Now, mind you, if you've ever watched the movie Semi-Pro with Will Ferrell playing as Jackie Moon, Andre 3000, then you would kind of know how janky all the business is when it came to the ABA. I mean, all of them weren't necessarily the strongest organizations, and some of them were on the brink of folding, if not folding already, during the NBA-ABA merger in '76. So as much as the NBA needed the ABA to expand, the ABA kind of needed the NBA to expand also, because as good as they were doing for the game of basketball, they couldn't keep it up money-wise. And the NBA had the money.
Father Patty stepped on the line. He stepped on.
No, it was legal.
No, he stepped on the line. You were looking at it. Come on.
Jackie, he made the shot.
Who the hell has $10,000?
Relax, the beer company will pay him.
We're not really a sponsor, just sounded professional.
In order for the NBA to expand, they needed to get rid of the ABA. So it went from 17 teams in the NBA to 22 in 1976, right? Now, we have 30 teams in the NBA looking to have 32 between Las Vegas and Seattle. The only way we can do that is to not have the competition of an ABA gathering players that could possibly play for the NBA. They did the merger, and now here we are expanding still to this very day. The second most important thing the ABA has given the NBA in this merger wasn't exactly the year of the merger. It was actually 3 years after the merger. But it specifically comes from the ABA. And what is it? The 3-point line. There is no Trae Young. There is no Reggie Miller without the ABA merging with the NBA, because the ABA were the first people, the first league to have a 3-point line. And it sounded crazy to people. Why? Because the NBA never had one, right? So let's think about it. Let's think about all the legendary players. Let's think about all the stats. Let's think about how they were even able to play and what they were playing like at the time. 1979 was the first year the NBA added the 3-point line, which, mind you, was supposed to be a 1-year trial. They were just doing it to see how it was going to look, even though they knew how it was going to look because the ABA's been doing it. Mind you, college ended up getting the 3-point line in 1980, which is the year after the NBA. So high schools were the last people to get the 3-point line, and the ABA was the first. The NBA is forever changed by having a 3-point line. One of the smartest things the ABA could have done. So thank you, ABA, for the 3-point line. You have made the game of basketball more exciting just by doing that. The third most important thing the ABA has given the NBA during the merger is a package deal. Now, they weren't a package deal during that time, and they are two completely separate players. But they ended up on the same team, and that ended up changing the NBA as we know it. This package deal of players is none other than Dr. J and Moses Malone. Now, Dr. J, he was drafted by the Virginia Squires in the ABA 1973. And he ended up winning a championship with the New Jersey Nets in the ABA. And then by 1976, right? All the teams that were trying to get him a contract between 1973 and 76 in the NBA, he didn't sign none of them. He ended up signing an even bigger contract than all the contracts that were offered with the Philadelphia 76ers, which is incredibly important because not only did he bring the influence of the youth, but he also brought style and substance to the NBA that they didn't have before. He was in dunk contests before in the ABA, and the ABA brought that to the NBA. So now Dr. J is in the first ever NBA dunk contest. He's telling people how to glide, right? He's number 32. Guess who ends up being number 32? Magic Johnson. Guess who's patterning their game off of Dr. J, basically word for word, bar for bar? Michael Jordan. The biggest of the biggest of the biggest were inspired by Dr. J, number 32. Eventually number 6 on the Philadelphia 76ers. Not only that, he won a championship in the ABA. He won the hearts of thousands in the streets. 1982, he goes to the finals. He loses to the Los Angeles Lakers. But there's another guy on the 76ers at that time in 1983 that had just won his finals MVP in 1983 and 3 MVPs before that. We're talking about the first person to come out of high school into the NBA. That's Moses Malone, bro. He was 6'10", 260, rebounding, getting like 20 rebounds sometimes. The man was a monster for his whole entire career. MVPs, won a finals MVP in 1983. No one's messing with Moses Malone other than maybe Kareem, right? Which brings me to my next subject of the NBA before we even get into this beautiful, beautiful season that we're going to start, right? And that's the Lakers versus the Celtics, which eventually becomes Larry Bird versus Magic Johnson. Now, this was already a thing in 1979. 3 years after the merger, first year for the three-point line, Magic and Larry Bird were drafted into the NBA, and immediately changed the NBA as we knew it, right? Magic Johnson's rookie year, he goes to the finals and wins. The year is 1980. The next year, 1981, the Boston Celtics, Larry Bird, wins the championship. The next year, so a rookie wins the finals, and a second year guy who's from the same draft class wins the next finals after that. That's 1981. Now 1982, what I tell you, the Los Angeles Lakers beat the Philadelphia 76ers. Dr. J, Moses Malone. You can probably see that in Winning Time. Magic's second finals in his third year. Shit is definitely changing, right? And then we have a rematch. Moses Malone winning the championship and the finals MVP with Dr. J. Now we got Magic with 2, Larry with 1, and we're just now getting into this year, 1984. 1984 is very important because we have a very special draft coming up. But we're not going to get into that right now. We're going to get into the lore of the season, of the created player, of the draft, of certain players on teams, rookies, all of that coming up in the next episode. Stay tuned.
Well, we can finally say it. The NBA regular season is about to get underway. And here at 2K Sports, we couldn't be happier. In this one, we'll see the Philadelphia 76ers against the Washington Bullets.